Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Close Call Show. Today, we're starting a new series, and in this series, we're going to invite senior investors that have been there, done that, and we're going to talk to them about their career progression. And not just that, we're trying to steal a sneak peek into some of the challenges that they face in their everyday career. Without much further ado, I'd love to welcome you, Isha, to the show. I've known you for a couple of years now. You're one of those candid, no bullshit, let's get things done sort of VC that I've met. Super happy to have found you, met you, and had this connection with you for so far. I'll leave it on to you. I'd love to start with a bit of an introduction about yourself and your fund. Over to you.
Sure, excited to be here, Jayashree. I'm Isha, partner at Mercury. We are an early stage venture capital fund, mainly investing at pre-seed and seed in the UK. We lead rounds with £1 million checks. On average, we've invested in about 60 companies so far across the two funds, and we're currently deploying capital from our latest 50 million fund. We invest in UK startups or founders based here, so there's got to be very close proximity with this geography. The core thread that has woven together our portfolios across the two funds so far has been investing in AI. We also have a media, entertainment, and technology focus. So we look for AI applications in that sector, but also have invested in a number of horizontal platforms that service the media industry, but also many others. So that's the focus for us currently.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, I've known you and you've had this glorious career of being an investor for a long time now. So, you've started somewhere else and then you sort of pivoted into the VC industry, started as an associate, and then you've grown up the ranks to being a partner now at a fund. What I want to know is how have your responsibilities shifted over these different roles? In the sense, what have you added onto your plate and what have you sort of taken away from your plate as you went up the ladder?
Yeah, so coming into venture now about 7 years ago, from a very traditional job of, M&A advisory back home in India. I'd shifted geographies, so moved to the UK, and then also changed my career path, so to speak, and wanted to really work in venture for a number of reasons that I can talk about. But I think the role to begin with was simply, I say simply, but it was about finding companies that the fund that I was at initially wanted to be investing in. So I think as anyone joining the industry in the first, say, 2 years, the focus is always on finding deals, building your network with other investors, with founders, and so on, and just getting the fund deal coverage in their geographies, in their sectors of interest, and just making sure that you're covering 100% of the market. So if you can do that much in the first year of being in venture, bringing all the relevant deals to the table, making sure they're seen in a timely way, I think you would have been doing your job. So, and that's sort of what I was doing in the first 1 or 2 years of being in venture, building out my network, and also finding the deals that we wanted to be looking at.
And so that's the first formative years. And then how did you add anything to the being the lead sourcer, being 100% covering your market? Did anything else add
Yeah,
on to you?
yeah. On there's always a lot of stuff that gets added onto the plate, but the core job still remains the same, which is to find the deals that you want to be investing in ideally. So I think the focus from shifts slightly from, oh, did we find and see all the deals that we wanted to see, and did this person in their first year help us do that, to did we find deals that we wanted to do, and did we actually end up doing any during that year? And there might be targets that you're assigned as a junior investor or not, really depends on the firm, but still you're looking at doing a few sourcing and getting a few deals over the line. So I'd say that's the next step change that happens, within after the first 2 years. And then it's a lot more about, as you carry on, a lot about, what can you bring to the table to the founders. So this is about helping them on and off boards. Um, what is the value that you add personally, individually, to the team that you're investing in and backing. And then eventually, as you sort of become much more senior in the fund, say a partner, it's almost everything from deal sourcing, winning the deal, getting the deal done, helping create the value that's needed, to all the way to exiting. So managing the deal end to end through its life cycle, but actually it also becomes a lot more about not just deploying the capital, but also raising money for the fund and building the LP relationships, and getting the capital for the next fund, say. So, that's sort of how I would think about the roles and responsibilities of anyone in this in the space who decides to stay for a long time.
And I really love the fact that the core job remains the same. You're only as good as the last deal that you did, uh, but then there are more facets that you sort of learn and add to your skill set, especially the bringing the money into the fund, not just deploying capital. Okay, now you're a partner, new fund, 50 million. Let's say you want to hire a principal, or a senior investor. What are you exactly looking for? Is it okay, do they have 3 years of investment experience so that they can see the deal end to end? Or are you looking for a network coverage in a particular market? Or are you looking at someone who's complementing your team's already existing skill sets? How should one prepare themselves for a senior investor role? Because when I look at a job board, there's so many analyst, investment intern positions open, very few principal positions, and they're very competitive. So, what would your advice be to someone that's in that level?
Yeah, definitely. And from the outside, it can be really hard to judge exactly what it is, beyond the job description that a fund might be looking for. And I think, for anyone who's joining, in that capacity as a principal or as a senior investor, my first suggestion and recommendation would be, to get to know the team that you're, going to be working for. And that's not necessarily possible every single time. Um, but through your network, just, yeah, get to know them and how they operate and how they invest. That'll give you hopefully a lot of good insight into where you might be able to complement them, as you said, which I think is probably going to be the most important thing. So the table stakes would be similar, to what you might see or hear of from most VC funds, which is, find us the best deals that we would not have seen, otherwise, help us win those deals, deploy the capital. So, that's the job. So the core skill set remains the same, and you're trying to work out, what's that little extra that they're looking for, which is why they're hiring. And so in some cases it could be, we're just going to be investing in a completely new geography, and that's a space, that we don't have a great network in, or actually we're going further down the value chain and we want to be doing more earlier stage investing. So, we're just looking for people with a different network altogether. Or it could be that, they're looking for a very specific skill set, say somebody that also likes to do research or is just way more technical or specialized in in a particular field. So I think that is the kind of thing that sometimes pops up in a job description. But when you're running a very competitive process and everyone's coming along with that additional value that they can deliver, it's truly about working out what does the fund really want out of their next hire. Um, and that, is usually something you can either find out through your network or by having good conversations with people, with the hiring manager and the rest of the team, which I appreciate is a hard kind of place to get to in the first go, if you're applying cold. But I would definitely try to do as much digging as I can ahead of that, to really bring that and deliver that to the team. And I think another thing that is usually underrated is a little bit about persistence, you know? And by that I mean, yes, hustle, but in a good way, in the sense that if you get to say a first meeting with, someone on the team, what did you learn from that meeting? What can you do, next to stand out for them? It could be a deal that or a few deals that you send their way, or a piece of market research that you might have done that really demonstrates um, you know what you've already got in your skill set, or it could be something completely different. So I would just say every step in the process is a step about just learning more, delivering more, demonstrating more, and taking the conversation further. And finally, at the end of the day, even if you don't really get the job, there's a connection that you've made, there's an impression that you've formed. And I think that is something people forget to, recognize, and just take it as a, failure or as a disappointment if you don't get the job that you were really going for. But actually, in my own personal experience, those conversations have kind of fructified and led to more interesting things down the line. So I would just, add that last bit and highlight it for anyone listening today.
Oh, this is honey to my ears, because more often when I hear candidates saying, "Oh, I got rejected at this fund, that fund," I mean, that's okay. You've had three conversations with the investment team. That's three new people that you've spoken to. That should be in your contact list, and just keep them updated. I think this is such good valuable advice, and I really love the fact about persistence. Show them more. Show them what you can. I think I really love that. I think this is something that I'm going to take away in my career journey as well. Well, Isha, yeah.
I wanted to just add to that. That's it's interesting that you point that out yourself, because um, here are two paths that things could go down, right? Say you've been through this interview process and you made a good impression, and it was a very competitive process, and for whatever reason they couldn't hire you. Just the nature of the industry means people will be willing to help you out, right? So if they come across another job that could be good for you, one, they'd be willing to put in a good word for you and then refer you. But actually, and probably more importantly, if you've got the self belief that you will land, somewhere in venture, and this is definitely something you're going to be doing over the next few years, just think of them as a part of your of your network, right? So you kind of go back to them in 6 months, perhaps at a different fund, but you're just saying, hey, join here, but here's the stuff that I'm looking at, and so I would just take it as a positive and never a negative, really. Although in the moment it does feel
Pinch you.
yeah.
Cool. So the next bit of the conversation that I want to get into is, what's been one of the most ugly days that you've had? What's been one of those big challenges that you've faced in your VC career? In a sense that if you were to look back in hindsight, what would you do differently, or what you wish you'd known better? So is there anything like that that's been super challenging, or something that you had to learn on the go, or trial by fire, one of those moments that you can share?
Fortunately for me, there haven't been, like true war stories so
Mm-hmm.
far. But I think what's always disappointing is when, you've invested in a company that's had massive potential at the point that you invested, and for reasons apart from what was in the control of the founders themselves, the business doesn't work out. And so, one of them in my personal experience was a company that was a fintech business. It was in the lending space, and um, because the market had shifted so very much with, interest rates and just the competitive nature of the industry with other, upstarts coming along, the need for an excessive amount of capital to have any impact on the bottom line just meant that that business wasn't one that was going to flourish, and there were a lot of things that were just out of control of the founders. And, as a vested party, not just as a financial stakeholder in the company, but as a vested party who wants to also see the founders do really well and understands how hard the journey for them personally has been, it does take a bit of an emotional toll, as much as it's hard just as an investor knowing that, that company might not return the capital or return as much capital that you once hoped that it would. So I think that is the bit that's really hard to just perhaps deal with. And it was certainly hard for me. And I think another bit that does tend to be a bit hard, especially in the early days of being a venture capitalist, say your first 6 months to 1 year, is just you say no to so many founders. And it almost feels like you're persistently saying no to almost everyone that you meet. And that could be a really hard thing to do, because sometimes you come across founders who are just so very passionate about the spaces they're working in, or the pain points they're trying to solve for, or sometimes they've just invested a lot of their own time, personal capital, to just have to go back to them and say no, and tell them why you don't believe in their business, can be also quite hard if you empathize with them fully. So I think those two, the second one being less of a war story as such, but just a emotional roller coaster that you get on, and probably get better at dealing with eventually, but have to get on in the early days.
Yeah. I actually want to go back to the first example, is that I'm just thinking about this. I mean, to find a prospect and then do all the due diligence, convince your team, convince the investment committee, and say, this is the next big thing. You convince everyone, and then you put money into it. And then when things, I mean, we all know the power law says it all. We know the nature of the industry. But then when you believe in something so much, and then things don't turn out the way you want it to be, how do you then come out of that saying, oh shit, I thought this is gonna be it, but it's not how it is? So do you take the hit personally, or how do you have a team discussion about it, or is there a learning saying, okay, let's do a post-mortem on what we could have done better? um and then how does the conversation go with the founders saying, okay, do you want to liquidate, do you want to close business, what happens?
Yeah, that's such an important part of the internal kind of process, if you can call it that. And I don't think it doesn't happen all of a sudden. It's a process, right? It happens over time. So you'd be talking as an investment team. You'd be talking about how every portfolio company is doing, and you'll be talking about particular challenges anyone might be facing. So in this instance, if the market conditions have changed, or there are any big headwinds that a company is facing, then you'd be sitting down and updating the team and talking about the reasons why. You'd be thinking about what we believed in when we first invested, what's changed, and as a result of that, why does the outcome now look much different to what we hoped it would? And it's a process that you get on, a process of fact finding, a process of introspecting, as well, individually, but also as a team. What else could we have thought about that we didn't? And you then have a lot of takeaways and lessons learned. And that's really the nature of the business. Only a few companies end up returning the capital on any fund, and that's just true for not any one fund or any fund at a particular stage. It really applies to every VC fund at any stage anywhere in the world. So it's really the nature of a function of the risk that you're taking, and the earlier you are on that risk spectrum, the more risk there is. So that is fundamentally understood by any investing team and recognized. So the process internally would be something along those lines, and I guess it would be similar as far as founders are concerned. So this is where your relationship with the founders really helps. A relationship of trust, hopefully, transparency, openness, showing vulnerability where needed. is absolutely required so that you can talk about the difficult things, and there'll be many difficult points, along the journey, so that you can have a good, one, you could either salvage the situation if possible, but that you are on the same page as your founders at all times, which is pretty crucial if things are going downhill and you need to have the tough conversation of, what should we be doing here? What's the right thing for, the shareholders of the company? Um, so that's sort of how I would, approach and advise anyone to think about managing the portfolio.
Wow, fantastic. So if I have to summarize this and sort of give it in bullets, so it is relationship above everything else. So start building trust and a very good candid relationship with your portfolio companies or your investee companies, especially with the founders. And then if I can, if what I heard is right, it's also about proactive communication, setting expectations, right? And regular communication with the portfolio companies, so it doesn't come as an alarm. It just is, okay, what's happening? Are you constantly monitoring the market along with your portfolio company? Makes sense. Anything else that you'd add to these two bullets?
I think you've summarized it really well for me, but nothing else for me to add as well. There's a lot in there to unpack.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you know, yeah, I'd leave it there.
Okay, so the last part of this show, of this episode, is what are you excited about for the future of Mercury or VC or investing?
Sure, yeah. So, we're at a very interesting and pivotal time as far as technology shifts are concerned. And we've been through a few big technology shifts in the past, the internet, the dot-com era, as they call it, mobile after that. And, as far as machine learning and AI is concerned, it's always, well, up until this point, it's always been about, specialized models doing very specific things. And with generative AI or large language models, it has truly unlocked the ability for AI to be generalized in nature, which has almost been impossible up until this point, and that opens up just a number of different opportunities and capabilities of these models. And so that's been a pretty big shift that's taken place over the past 2 years since ChatGPT happened. And so I'm personally really excited by what lies ahead of us for for AI in particular, especially in media and entertainment. And so that's something I'm looking forward to following, tracking, and investing in, as we have done in the past.
Thank you so much, Isha. It was wonderful, wonderful speaking with you. I think you've sort of shared some really cool, important tips and points that everybody who's listening should ponder upon and take away.
Great. Thank you, Jeshri. This has been a lot of fun.